The West Virginia Mountaineer football team is gearing up for what is one of the most anticipated off seasons in what Couz and I anticipate about 6 years. But what if things go off the rails? It's a best case, worst case episode of Mountaineer Paul Talks Football. We get into it right after this word from our sponsor. This episode of Mountaineer Paul Talks Football is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family has always grown and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you.
This is for Cameron.
What is up, guys? Welcome in. My name is Mountaineer Paul. This is another edition of Mountaineer Paul Talks Football. Excited to bring it to you. My apologies, it's been a few days. My lecture has been off 2 straight days leading into not today, but yesterday and the day before. So no content for me, but that's all right. Couz was able to take care of the basketball channel. I'd like to welcome in Couz to this episode as well. We're going to be doing a little best case, worst case. And, it's this is one of those things you do whenever you're searching for content to do on your channel. And this is kind of one of those episodes, but I'm excited to do it because I think the potential for growth is there. There are a lot of questions with this team, Couz, especially on the back end with some transfer portal departures that never quite made it to town. Have some people still worried about the secondary, new pieces that have very little playing time. One piece has a lot, but at a low level. And a lot of people have questions about the back end. Could it still be a weakness for this team against Penn State at home, which would be a big boon for us this coming season? So, Couz, overall, give me your overarching, just how you're feeling about how the offseason's gone so far, and any concerns you got before we go through the schedule and kind of point out our best case, worst case.
Yeah, I think the offseason has gone well. Considering, when you look at especially when you look at the last 2 off seasons and how it seemed like just a mass exodus from the transfer portal. We didn't see that this year. Yes, we lost some guys. We lost a couple starters. But overall, I don't think we lost the number of – we haven't lost the number of guys we lost in previous years. And, in my opinion, the guys we lost this year are – and I don't mean to take shots at these guys at all, but I'm just being honest. I think they're more replaceable than the guys we lost, some of the guys we lost in previous years, because they left positions where we may have more depth, for example.
Right.
So in that aspect, I like it, and I like the pieces we brought in. The Coach Brown's brought in out of the portal. I think we brought in some really talented guys. I think especially having Drew Fabianich on board as the GM, I think that's big. This offseason, we didn't have him last offseason until like late summer, is my understanding. Yeah. So I think we might see the benefits of that. So I'm excited about this offseason, man. I think we're going to see I think the West Virginia has a good chance next year to be in the conversation at least for the Big 12 championship.
Agreed. So since we're talking about just this roster and a little bit about, you brought up Fabianich, his fingerprints are all over it, really. And you see the 3 key spots you see teams addressing are secondary, pass rush, and offensive line. And as long as you have a quarterback, obviously. One big thing that hasn't happened to West Virginia this year as well is that big receiver didn't leave, right?
Yep.
Guys that had left like last year, the Caden Prather that left and caught 55, 60 balls at Maryland this past year was probably this year's Traylon Ray, right? Or Hudson Clement. Both those guys still still in Morgantown, and keeping that skill talent together has been a big deal. Can't underestimate the loss of Zach Frazier. I think obviously,
right.
He's not a transfer portal loss, but he's still going to be a loss, unfortunately. Would love to somehow get him back, you know.
It'd be nice, wouldn't
But
it?
yeah, it would be crazy if it somehow happened, but it's not gonna. Um, I'd like to know who your favorite piece that's been added so far. I don't think I've really heard you talk about this a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really, honestly. I like Ty French. I think he's a big addition coming off the edge for us. I think we needed that. And I like the addition of Xavier Bosley on the offensive line. I mean, I do have faith in the guys we're bringing back, like Nick Malone, obviously White Malone on the left side. But I think Bosley gives you another guy he's played at the FBS level at Jacksonville State. He's going to he wants to play at West Virginia because he's a West Virginia kid, so it's going to mean a lot to him. Just continues that tradition of having West Virginia offensive linemen up there, And then it gives somebody. I think he and Nick Malone will have a battle to see who starts at the right tackle spot, and it's both guys are going to push each other to see who's the best. And who knows? Maybe Nick Malone even gets moved inside. I don't know. I don't know what the plan is, but the more depth you build, the more competition you have, the better the team's going to be overall. But I like those are probably the two that stick out to me the most. And obviously, the depth added in the secondary I think is big. When you look at T.J. Crandall from Colorado State, I would have to put him on that list as well. I think Crandall, Bosley, and Ty French are my three favorite additions to this roster, just off the top of my head.
And it's hard to say Bosley could even move inside. You never know what they're going to do with Matt Moore, how they cross-train these guys. Mm-hmm. I'd be shocked if Bosley didn't end up on the edge, right tackle, protecting Nico Marchiol's future backside, which is going to be a big deal. It's one of the reasons I think they targeted him. It's hard to get freshman All-America at the tackle spot, first, second team, I don't care which. So the upside is going to be there. Another year in this Mike Joseph weight room for this kid coming in is going to be huge.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I think he's going to make the biggest impact on the overall team next year. During my tape study, he's truly a road grader on the offensive line. At the run blocking standpoint, he did a lot of 14 pressures, which isn't good considering this competition he went up against. It's excellent as far as the number of pressures, but considering the talent they saw week in, week out, that's what worries me a little bit there.
Right.
Makes me wonder he needs to get a little better technique-wise at the Power 5 level. So getting into this, man, I think we want to do a little bit of best case scenario first. We'll start on the happy side for you. I'll give you my worst case next, and then we'll flip it. Okay. So if you don't want to pull up that schedule, Couz, give me your best case scenario for 2024 and the West Virginia Mountaineers football team.
Best case scenario, 11-1 would be best case scenario in my opinion. I don't see us going undefeated. I think that's unrealistic. 11-1 is not a prediction, by the way. That's just we're talking best case here. I think 11-1, winning the Big 12 and representing the conference in the college football playoff is
a dream.
I think it's unlikely but doable.
I agree. And I want to talk about your prediction just a little bit there.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get into the schedule a little bit? I know we don't know where or when we're playing some of these teams, but just generally speaking, where does that one loss coming from, do you think likely?
Probably Penn State. They're returning a lot of production just like West Virginia. That game is at home though, so as I talk through this, Paul, gosh, man, can I change my mind?
Of course.
10-2.
That's why 10-2.
I don't think 11-1 is realistic. I want to be realistic here. I think 10-2 is a more realistic best case scenario here. Even though I think we can beat Penn State, Penn State's going to be really good again. I think we dropped that one, and then I think we're going to, we're not going to go undefeated in the Big 12. The Big 12 is just there's too much parity in the league. We play a lot of the best teams in the league. So, we'll probably drop at least one. Where that loss is, it's hard to, without knowing exactly when these games are played on the schedule, it's harder to pinpoint where the loss comes in. But I do think West Virginia loses at least one conference game next year and the Penn State game. So I'm going to say 10-2 is my best case scenario, but that could still potentially get them in, to the college football playoff.
Agreed. and I think that's a pretty good call there, man. I'm going to give my worst case scenario for this team, and I got to be honest, man. This I don't think people realize how bad this could go. And we have to preface this with the expectations, right? Expectations can lead to a couple different things. Number one, people have expectations. When you have expectations, there's a lot of pressure that comes along with that.
Right.
On the flip side, resentments come when expectations are not met. And the head coach being enemy number one in that situation, depending on what the worst case you think this worst case is. I truly believe this is a team that could do something like what you said, or could not make a bowl game. And it really depends on several key factors, such as when are some of these games played, and what time, what dates, who stays healthy, and a bunch of other different things. The secondary, is it going to improve for this team? But if a worst case scenario would look a little something like this, you start off 0-1 at Penn State. You have a bounce back game against Albany. Pitt comes to Morgantown and beats you. I think that's any worst case scenario has to include a loss to Pitt.
Good point.
You get boat raced by Arizona. You probably get back on track against Cincinnati. You lose to Oklahoma State. You probably scrape by a Texas Tech or a Baylor. You're going to lose one of those two games. You're going to lose to a Kansas State, and Iowa State, and you're going to beat UCF. Like, that's, to me, what a worst case scenario would look like. A 3 to 4 win season where you miss a bowl game, and just like in the thumbnail that's going to be here, if that happens, Couz, if something like that were to happen, does Neal Brown survive it?
My opinion, no, he would not.
Right.
He's going to be – this next season is going to potentially, in my opinion, determine Neal Brown's future at West Virginia, because if he does well, he's likely to get a contract. He's likely to get an extension, because as of right now, I think he only has 2 years left on his deal. I think his deal runs through 2026 or 27 maybe. But either way, he's only got a couple years left, and in recruiting, that's kind of a big deal. You don't want to be a quote unquote lame duck. You want to have You want to be able to walk into parents' living rooms and say, "I'm going to be here for a while," right? Yep. But if it doesn't go well, then he could be out the door, because he's not going to want to accept not getting an extension, or he's not going to perform well enough, and they're going to can him. So, I think this is the pivotal year for Neal Brown and his future at West Virginia.
Agreed. And I'll tell you, man, I don't think this is going to happen. I would lean towards the best case scenario in this entire conversation we're having, if I were going to pinpoint one. But I do think there's a possibility for something like this to happen. It all just depends on, obviously, the injury situation. We can't have a Garrett Green and a Nico Marchiol go down. Something crazy like that could happen, or a bunch of skilled talent gets hurt, or just even more, we're having to outscore teams every week. It's the Big 12. You could lose a bunch of one-score games, like TCU. Yep. I think they won 5 or 6 the year they went to the playoff. One-score games, and just incredibly lucky. That's the kind of stuff you got to happen. And also goes against teams. We've seen what's happened to us. We've lost. If we sat down and looked at over Neal Brown's tenure, how many one-score games we've lost, it's probably he could probably add 10 to 15 games to his resume.
Yeah,
in the win column. So that's probably what I see as the worst-case scenario for this team, though. And I think Neal Brown would not be back at that point. That's why the thumbnail looks like it does. Flipping this thing back around, Couz, we're going to go from worst to worst here. What is your worst-case scenario for the West Virginia Mountaineers? What's that look like for you?
I think it's pretty similar to yours, Paul, to be honest. Dropping the game against Penn State at home. You obviously beat Albany. I think losing to Pitt is part of that scenario, a worst case scenario. That puts you at 1-2. I think you lose to Arizona, especially if they keep Noah Fafita, which it looks like they might. That puts you at 1-3. And it's going to be a tough road trip out there too, you know. You probably beat Cincinnati. You lose to Oklahoma State. I think you lose to Texas Tech. I think you may beat Baylor because I'm still not convinced they're back yet.
Right.
I think you lose to Kansas. Probably lose to Kansas State. Probably lose to Iowa State. And then I think you might beat UCF at home to close out the year. That's a 4-win season. And Neal Brown is looking for a job if that happens, in my opinion.
Too bad we don't have the order of this schedule.
Yeah, hopefully that'll be released. I think they said it came out last year. I think I heard it on a podcast. I think it was like January 31st or something. So hopefully by the end of the month, we'll know the schedule. And obviously one or both of us will probably do a show about it when it happens. But so y'all be on the lookout for that. But yeah, West Virginia plays 5 home games. 5 conference home games, 7 home games in total next year, which is good. But when you look at the games, the road games they play, at Oklahoma State, at Arizona, they're expected to be 2 of the top teams in the conference. At Texas Tech, Joey McGuire seems to have that program on the upward trajectory. Those are some tough games. And then at Pitt, that's always a tough one. Because it's a rivalry game. So it's conceivable, possible, not saying likely, but possible. West Virginia loses all 5 of their, all 5 of their road games next year.
Yeah. And to me, this isn't the 07 Mountaineer team where they were just decimating everybody on the schedule. There was very little parity in that conference outside the top 2 or 3 teams anyway, yearly. So that's not this situation, and obviously the portal has only amplified that. The same additions we've made, a few other teams have made, and even more. So teams are just as good or better. Look at Oklahoma State. I think they're going to be nobody talks about them a lot right now. I mean, they do, but I think they're not getting enough credit. They're really, especially if they, whether they develop or bring in, or if Bowman even plays better, man, they're a really good quarterback away from being extremely scary. Obviously Ollie Gordon is the scariest player on the schedule, in my opinion. Just after what he did last year, we're having nightmares. So, but on my best case scenario for this team to end things off here, I do think it's a playoff appearance. And I don't have this team winning a national championship in my base case scenario. That's like beyond my wildest dreams. But I do think a 12-team playoff appearance is the best this team could hope for. This is a team that lacks depth in a few key spots. Doesn't have enough defensive line depth, in my opinion, to really, and especially on the back end, to really be there, like some of the other teams are. Well, but I think an 11-1 season is possible. Throw a dart at the dartboard of the Big 12, and that's where the loss comes from. I think this team, in the best case scenario, could beat Penn State. I really do, especially if them getting Kotelnicki scares the crap out of me from Kansas. I'm not going to lie. He's going to have that offense humming, but that's also a transition there. And I'll be honest with you, Drew Aller is going to be it's going to be interesting to see what that offense looks like with him.
Yeah.
In the way he does things. But they've got a guy, Bo, how do you say his last name, the quarterback at Penn State? Bo, his first, Prisbilla, however it says he.
Mm-hmm.
That kid right there he's a 4-3 guy. Be interesting to see what they do in the run game with him next year in Kotelnicki, because I think you'd be on the lookout for that backup quarterback at Penn State next year. While I'm huge on Aller as a pro-style quarterback, the Kotelnicki edition is kind of odd to me as far as his skill set. I'm sure they'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's a great point. I had totally forgotten about that.
Yeah, it's a big move. I mean, and they're losing Diaz, so that kind of offsets it a little bit. Their defense will be on a reset unless they just promote it from within, maybe go some of the same schemes for a year. But Penn State will be, they'll be a top 20 team again next year, if not further along, maybe top 15, top 10. They really have a shot to get over the hump of the Big Ten, I think, with Ohio State going through the transition and all that. So I think we can beat them, though. I really do. I think a lot of people feel good about it. I would favor Penn State, but I think it's definitely a doable thing for us, and then throw a dart at the dartboard in the Big 12.
Yeah.
So that's my best case scenario for this team. And we're going to lean towards that. Now, don't forget, guys, this was just a conversation. This is not predictions. This is not, so don't think we're being negative or too overly positive. This is just basically a big hypothetical conversation at the end of the day.
Yep, absolutely.
Couz, tell everybody where they can find you at, man. Sorry we didn't do this earlier.
No, that's all right, man. I'm at Couz's Corner over on YouTube. Obviously, you see how to spell it on the screen, but I always say how to spell it because it's not spelled the way it sounds. But you can find me on Couz's Corner on YouTube. Paul and I have a show together called Hoops from the Hills where we cover West Virginia basketball. We usually do a post-game live stream most games if we're able to talk about the game, good or bad. Also, I have a website, couzascorner.com. I have a lot of articles over there written by some writers that are on the team, and as well as myself. I'm hoping to bring on a couple more here in the next few days. So check that out. You can also reach out to me there. Go there and go to the bottom of my homepage, and you can send me an email, and I'll try my best to respond. And, of course, I'm on Twitter, X, whatever, at Couz206.
Awesome, man. And if you're at the end of this video, most likely you're already subscribed, but I'm going to say it anyway. Don't forget to subscribe to Mountaineer Paul Talks Football. Certainly like the video, guys. If you're here at this point in the video, I would appreciate that like button, guys. And last but not least, drop a comment below and let us know what your best and worst case scenario is for this West Virginia Mountaineers team. It would be greatly appreciated. We thank you for joining us, guys, and engaging in this conversation about the Mountaineers next year. It's going to be an exciting offseason in this 24 team. Hopefully some more additions to come. We'll be reporting on that as well. This has been another edition of Mountaineer Paul Talks Football. This episode is over. We are out.